everybody. You are on the inaugural podcast with my brother, David Donahue. Say hello, David Donahue.
Hello, David Donahue.
We are starting a new podcast today. I'm excited, Dave. This is going to be awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, so Dave and I, we'll unpack this as we go, but we grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, Weymouth, which is South Boston. Had, lived in the same house, but had two different experiences. And again, we'll unpack all that as we go. But last couple of years, Dave and I have kind of compared notes and kind of got back together. He really was instrumental in helping me write a book. I wrote a book called Groomed, and the first part of the book is about my childhood experience. And then the second half, or a good majority of the book, is about my church experience, which kind of parallels. And, again, we'll get into some of these things, but Dave was really, really instrumental in helping me write that book. And I was on the phone with him just about every day. And so as we were on the phone talking about stuff, David, as you're going to see, David is incredibly funny. And I'm hilarious. So, no, we just got rolling, and just funny things would happen. And so, and we probably said it, Dave. I'm going to say like 10 times, like, we need to do a podcast. We need to do a podcast.
No,
So
right. Yeah.
we finally just started a podcast. So we hope so. Yeah. So, David, what's your goal in this podcast? What are you thinking?
Well, I've been that's been running through my mind since we started to really get serious about this. I'd like this to be a blend of some, Boston humor that we can maybe incorporate so others across the country might get it in a way, and then and some serious subject as well, So yeah, that's where I think the direction that we're trying to get to is anyway.
Yeah. So when I a few seconds ago I said we grew up in the same house pretty much. I mean, I left when I was 16, and you pretty much left when you were around 15, 16. But I was already gone by then. David's younger than me, by the way. I'm the older brother.
You didn't really have to say that, Mike, but yeah, go ahead.
So what I said earlier, we grew up in the same house, but we didn't have the same experience. Why did I say, like, what do you think about that?
Huh. Well, so, it's a very true statement. We grew up, as brothers, but we were so far apart. We were not your traditional, what the traditional cultural idea of, brothers. We're fairly close in age. But I think from my experience, we had different mothers. So, our mother's the same physically, but emotionally and mentally, we had different moms. I believe that. Right.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I mean, to clarify, I put in my book that, we had different roles, and my role was the scapegoat. David's was sort of how would you classify your role, Dave?
Well, so, none of these are, none of these roles are in a vacuum. So mine kind of fluctuated back and forth between the class clown, the family jokester, mostly to coax mom out of her depression, because she was in one pretty much throughout our childhood, low grade, deep, it varied. And the other one, the other role I think I had was that I disappeared. So, and that was in our house, the less work you were, the more accolades you were. So, right. And
what do you mean?
Do that. So, the less mom had to focus on you and your behavior or whatever it was, the more she loved you. Right. So that's right. Like, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can't get any other way.
That's a good way to put it. Because I was the troublemaker. I was always in the news, so to speak, as far as, family things that are going on. My grades weren't great. My, behavior. I hung out with some pretty shady people. We were doing a lot of crazy things. It wasn't like out of control stuff, but it was like mischievous stuff, breaking windows in somebody's house, getting in fights,
taunting the elderly.
taunting the elderly. So we should kind of describe our neighborhood. So South Boston, so south of South Boston, basically. So we're probably 8-10 minutes from downtown Boston if there was no traffic, right? So there was a town called Weymouth, and in our neighborhood, we had really a bunch of old people and some young progressives, but most of it was a bunch of older people, and then us. And we were right smack dab in the middle of this neighborhood, and we had kind of a dilapidated house. We were the first divorced home. My dad and mom divorced when I was 5. David was probably 3. So we were the first family
Broken
in that
home
area.
is always described. Broken home, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were the broken home. We were the broken home. And then, next door to us was a guy named Harold Trask, which we will definitely be unpacking that old guy.
Harold Trask was in World War One, just for context.
Yeah, and he had like a plate in his head or something, or he was gassed or something crazy. Every time he got mad at us and did something crazy, my mom would go, "Leave him alone. He got gassed in the war." And we're like, he got gassed? But anyways, and then on the other side of it,
get gas.
Can I have some of that? And then on the other side of us was this lady named Anna Buckley, who was, she was old as dirt as well. And she was like the Snoop of the neighborhood. David didn't like her.
Of the neighborhood, really.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
In a weird way, right?
And she didn't like you, did she?
No, she didn't. No, she was.
Why? Because I figured she wouldn't like me, but she kind of did like me sometimes.
I don't, I kind of sassed back to her. I wasn't buying her, thing. I don't know why. I think she had a close relationship with mom, and maybe I was threatened by that. I don't want to dig too deep into it. She was a smelly old moth-ridden, old bat. And I think I called her that at least once or twice over the years. So, yeah.
So I've just for so people can see this on my. Oh, here we go. That's the picture of our front yard right there, and that's my sister Karen, myself, so Karen, myself. This is Billy. He passed away. And then this Davy, my sister Patty, cousin Jeffrey, and Ricky. And so I think there was an Easter picture or something like that. But that was the house in Weymouth, Mass. Yep. Yeah. So yeah, we kind of we had this neighborhood thing going on, and we had all these different characters in the neighborhood. We'll unpack some of those as we go. But yeah, just it was. I mean, it was a lot of fun, but there was a lot of trauma too. And David and I would definitely, I'd say out of all the siblings, we were definitely pitted against each other because we were the 2 males. And, my mom really did not like me. I mean, we'll unpack this, but there was a lot of
trauma. That's a conservative statement, but right.
Yeah. And so I think she used Dave to try to, hurt me with that, and stuff. So David and I, we again were pitted against each other. Later in life, we came back and, kind of reunited and compared notes and figured out that was a play, totally on Alice's, in her playbook, and she was trying to do that on purpose. So, Dave, what's your opinion about that?
Well, so I mean, just the overall feel of the neighborhood was. In the background, that house is gray, but and that was the theme of all the houses around us: gray, beige, white. And then in the mid-'70s, my mother painted it fire engine red. So I mean, if she could have
I painted it. I helped paint that. I did a lot of that.
Right, yeah. Right. Yeah, we were hanging off, makeshift scaffolding at 8 years old. I got this piece right here.
That's not a lie.
First story's up, right? But if mom could have stenciled a middle finger on the front door, that's basically what that color was. It was, symbolic of our role in the neighborhood. Like, how dare you paint the house red? It just didn't conform with, the beige sense that you got from these people. They were unremarkable people, And again, we were a new family. These people had all raised their families, these elderly people. They were holding on until the nursing home, came in. And they were right at that, within 10 years of that margin. So they were very old people, set in their ways and very judgmental, I think. Right.
Yeah, I felt that all the time. I felt like we were constantly had eyeballs on us, and we were the black sheep. We were the the stain on their portrait of Norman Rockwell, living or whatever. And
Right.
yeah,
Right. These
so
people were
I think Alice relished in that. I think she liked that, in a way. I mean, I think she like, again, painting the house red. Like, okay, it was a fu to the neighborhood. I'm not going to conform to your what you think we should be. And in part, like, even though Alice and I were at odds, that's where we kind of, I liked that part of her. I did like that defiant, I'm not going your way, attitude, because it's sort of who I am today. Maybe she instilled that in me. I don't know, but I kind of liked that. It
right.
caused a lot of problems, but it definitely caused some problems.
So, I'll just weigh in here. I'm the ancestry guy. So I have traced our family back to our ninth grade grandmother, who was born on the Mayflower in Plymouth Harbor. Her mother died in childbirth. So I often say, when people say, "Oh, you're descendants of the Mayflower," so we're like a group of people that couldn't conform with societal norms, risked their lives of their loved ones, including their children, got on a leaky boat to sail to a foreign land where nobody would tell them what to do. Yeah, that sounds like our family. Like,
And there was booze along the way too. Don't forget that.
right.
And
It was like,
lobster. They had the
it
lobsters.
was like a booze cruise.
The first booze cruise. The Appletons and the Allentons were on it.
Right. Right.
My God.
So, I mean, that is kind of a spirit that we both embrace, I think, so, and that stuff didn't start with Mom. It goes way back, and
Yeah.
I don't want to go that far back. I know we only have a limited time, but right. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but I appreciate David's done a lot of work. I mean, a lot of work on the ancestry stuff, and we found some interesting stuff, and hopefully at some point we'll get into some of that stuff too. But well, Dave, I'm so glad that we're going to do this, and we're going to fix the plane while it's flying. So we're going to do different things, and I think one of the things that when I left Boston, for me, which was hard, is to explain this to people, that there's such a strong heritage. And I think it's everywhere. I think people from the Midwest probably hang on to a certain heritage. It just feels like it's deeper. Well, probably because our country began, back in the East Coast, back in Boston, Plymouth, and we had a cottage. We spent time, in Plymouth and Wareham, which was next to Plymouth, and
right.
We were steeped in history. We were steeped in all that stuff. And I remember, going and seeing the Plymouth Rock and, the Mayflower replica, and doing the, the Freedom Trail in Boston, and thinking this stuff was lame, like, oh, big deal. And then going out
didn't one of your best friends get arrested for pissing on Plymouth Rock?
Yeah, it was a bad night. They did. Anyway,
we took a few things for granted back then, but anyway.
That's what I'm saying. Like, we did. Like, we pissing on the Plymouth Rock. Like, that should be the title of this podcast. Pissing on the Plymouth Rock. There we go. We found it. We did. We took it for granted. Like, it was like whatever, and then I get out to the Midwest and people are like, you saw the Plymouth Rock. Oh, rah, rah, rah. I'm like, well, yeah, it was in my backyard, basically. So, yeah. But I did. I missed and I'm a sports guy. David and I have a different, kind of a different, I don't want to say philosophy, but Dave's not a big sports guy. So I embrace all the Boston sports. I still do. I live out here in Nebraska, and I was watching the Bruins yesterday,
I'll watch baseball, but that's about it. The rest of it, yeah.
Yeah, that's like watching paint dry.
I know, but I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, no. So, yeah, I'm glad we're doing this, Dave. I love you,
Too. I love you
and
too, Mike. Yep.
you're a good guy. Dave's a good man.
Yeah.
So
I'm trying to be. So anyway, to get back to our neighborhood and our, in the folly that was our lives, I think myself today, like I'm just finding my feet today from all that. And I think of myself like almost like coming out of this slimy pod where I was, I mean, let's face it, Michael, we were really stigmatized, and I should speak for myself. And you know, I mean, I carried the shame, even the shame of my father, who grew up in that neighborhood as a foster child, and we can talk about that later. But that that kind of second class citizenship was passed on to us. The fact that we came from this broken home, um, and and we didn't fit the norm. We lived in a big red house. Um, I felt out of place all my life. I felt like something was wrong with me, and that I should always be ashamed of something. And I felt like that up until about 10 years,
wow,
on some level. Right. So it's just, through a lot of self-discovery and also the ancestry stuff, which, there's a lot of nobility in our past as well. I can walk in those shoes, but, the shoes we walked in on Prospect Street were, they were hand-me-downs. We were hand-me-down kids, right? I
wow,
mean,
yeah. I mean, that's a great. That's another podcast title. The hand-me-down kids, because we were marginalized at best. You know,
right,
um, and it was maddening because we're all pretty intelligent. You, David, you were. I'll say this. When he was tested, he had the highest IQ of any kid in our town that year when he was tested. So,
shit.
and seriously, David's very, very smart, and it's in the family. So I don't know if I'm as smart as Dave, but
No,
I'm not.
there's definitely a streak there for sure.
Yeah, but we were made to feel like we were the dumb kids because we didn't have a lot of means.
Right.
We were poor. We had broken down cars, broken down house. The front door, and this front door of this house here, usually was all messed up. That one looks in pretty good shape, but
Right. There's some missing asbestos tiles that probably went into a peanut butter sandwich. You know.
that's why I get this little twitch. Um,
Oh, we shouldn't make fun of
yeah,
that.
so I mean, it just feeling like we were marginalized and feeling like we weren't good enough. And I'm glad you came out of that fog. I think for me, I came out of it. I don't remember when, but I'm probably still in it at some ways. But that stuff stays with you. But you get this revelation that, wait a minute, I'm not stupid. I'm pretty smart. I remember for me, I was somebody confronted me one time and basically said that to me. They said, "Do you understand how intelligent you are?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And like, "No, Mike, you really like take an IQ test." And I did, and it was high. I forget the number. And those things fluctuate. When you do them online, it's
Right.
not quite as accurate as if you sat with a psychiatrist. But I I was amazed. I was like, wow, I guess and then I started comparing myself to other people going, no, I'm pretty smart. But I was made to feel like I wasn't, and you were made to feel like you weren't. And that had a big impact, I think, on us as adults.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. And I don't, those people were in their own way of thinking. Like you said, this was an old neighborhood, and divorce was definitely not part of the equation. You just stuck it out, and if you were in a bad marriage, either way, you stuck it out. You took the abuse. Divorce was not an option, especially
Right.
because of the Catholic influence in our neighborhood. I mean, we had right
Huge.
at the bottom of the hill there was this Catholic compound called Sacred Heart, that a school from grades 1 through 12, a huge church and a huge influence in the neighborhood. And you and I talked about this, like hearing the bells, and the bells were tolling. Basically, every time you heard that bell, it was almost like,
Get in line.
right,
Get
right,
in
hit
line.
two,
Get
right,
in line.
right, yeah, right, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
You must conform. You must conform.
Or,
Yeah.
you're no good. You're no good.
Or
And the
Catholic
other
priest
part,
going, I'll meet you later. I'll meet you later. Okay.
right.
I'm sorry. I digress.
Right. No, but
That's an episode.
and then even the school that we went to was Dad had some of those teachers that he was a foster kid. He grew up with one family all of his life, but they never gave him their name, and that in and of itself set him apart. And some of those teachers, like Mrs. Lonigan, Mrs. Whitney, we had, you know,
Yeah.
so there was
Yeah,
there
I remember.
weren't any great expectations from the Donahue brothers, for the
Right.
Donahue brothers, right?
Right. Yeah, they had us pegged. They had us in a box, and there was nothing you could do. I remember feeling that way. Like, there's nothing you're going to be able to do to get out of that box. I remember one time I went down to the library basically there was a volunteer thing to get out and help kids read. I got punished one time, and they made me go down and read to little kids. Well, it kind of had the reverse effect on me. I actually really liked it because those kids were non-judgmental, and they were looking at me like I was a hero. I was like, I like this feeling. So when they had this volunteer thing at the library, Tufts Library, I went down there. It was like a Tuesday night, and I remember this. It was a cop, it was Berkey, and he was the cops were the ones that were sponsoring this program. I didn't know that, and they hated us, they hated me, they hated you too. And I remember walking in, and Berkey goes, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I want to help little kids." And he goes, "No, you don't. You're gonna be a loser like your father." I remember, and he embarrassed me, and I ended up walking out in front of everybody and feeling like a piece of shit. And then I remember walking home going, "There's nothing really I can do here. Like, they're gonna see you that way. It just doesn't matter. We were in that box,
There's no
and
proof that you could you could have shown them that we're gonna move that needle.
yeah.
Right. And Dad tried out for the cops, and I guess he didn't make it or whatever, but he knew all the
Well, he
cops.
was a drunk. I mean, you
Right.
can't be drunk. Well, you're a cop.
Right. Right. Well,
Well, you can, but
yeah.
you gotta hide it.
Um, I don't know what the story around that was, but all the cops knew Dad, knew our situation, because there was a lot of domestic violence that happened in their marriage. So,
They were
some
there
I
a lot.
remember, some I don't, but the cops were at our house, on many occasions. So we had it from all sides. There was like no escape from it. And for me, it had a long lasting effects, and it still does today. I'm pulling myself out of it. And part of that is doing this, family ancestry, like walking in my ancestors' shoes, and just taking some of the personal attack out of all of that. These things were inevitable. We had no chance of changing anybody's mind. We had, you know, we were pigeonholed, and that was it. So
Yeah, I like what you said there. Like, taking out the personal attack. That's a great way to say it, because that's what I think. When you take it away and go, well, that wasn't me. That wasn't my fault. That was going to happen no matter what was going on. It wasn't me personally. So now I can take me personally out of that box and then discover me personally. I can discover Mike Donahue and be who he is, and I don't have to go with the script. And they're not the source of my, like, for the longest time, for me at least, they were the source of my self worth. It was like, well, they think, the people that you looked up to, because some of these people you looked up to. Harold was an old guy that went through a war, and you always we were told to respect our elders and our grandparents, and then as you get older, you find out the humanity of these people, and maybe they weren't the greatest examples, and that's why they put you in the box.
right,
you
right,
you, you kind of figured that out, but you didn't know that as a little kid. You just really idolized these people and thought, well, what they, especially teachers. I mean, you're
right.
made to, you're told that teachers are, you know, important in your life and you should respect them. And then you find out that, they hated your dad, so they hated you. Oh, well, you could have told me that, if you told me that earlier, I would have been a little bit better off.
It
But
was like, oh, now I get it, kind of thing. Right.
right,
Yep.
exactly right.
Michael,
Yeah.
the other thing I want to circle back to that you mentioned is that, we were shiny even back then. And a lot of people resented that. Let's take, if diagnosed some of our neighbors, not just the elderly, these were all marginal people. I hate to sound like a snob, but they were, they were pole climbers. They were tile people. They were, kind of blue collar. And I'm not trying to,
Judge anybody. I get
cast
it.
aspersions or, but we looked at them like they were giants, and they were everyday, ordinary people. That yeah. So
Yeah, but we weren't, and that like both of us have strong personalities, and we walk in a room, we pretty much own the room, and our sisters were kind of in that category as well. But when we did something, it was good. It was it. I mean, I think that was for me. I didn't because I was so marginalized that for me, it was a church experience I had, that they put me on a stage and let me talk in front of people, and everybody was like, "Wow, that was so good." I'm like, "How? What?" Like, you know what I mean? I was
yeah,
baffled by that
right,
I had that much talent and ability because it was so put down and marginalized when I was a kid that I didn't see it, like kind of what we're talking about. But
right,
but we were always like that. We were like that when we were little. Whenever
right,
we would talk, I remember one time in 8th grade, uh, I raised my hand in a school assembly and said a bunch of things, and people clapped after I got done talking. And I remember going, like, "Oh, that was cool." Like, but
right,
that's kind of what we had. We just had that moxie. We had that
right,
persona. We walked in a room. You have it too. I mean,
right. But again, I just found it like 10 years ago. I mean,
yeah. I think you became aware of it 10 years ago, but
right, right,
you've
right.
always had
That's
it.
what you mean, right?
Yeah.
My moment was in college, and I was in my junior year at UMass, and I walked in, and this is how long ago it was. There was one of those mimeograph machines or whatever the hell they were. They projected your paper onto the screen. All
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
yeah, that's as far as I want to go with that. Anyway,
Baby's
um,
old.
right. So I walk in the room, and there's my paper, and I'm like, oh shit, I'm ready for like this is what not to do. The professor had it up there because it was an illustration of what the project was, what it was supposed to be like, broken down. And I was like, what? Me? You know,
That's awesome.
yeah, yeah. So
ABD.
right. After that, everybody, barraged me and tried to get me to help
Cheat up
with
you.
papers, right? But anyway, it was good in the moment.
Well, that's cool. This podcast really was just to introduce you guys to us, and we're gonna have guests on. We're gonna do some different things, and again, fix the airplane while it's flying. But thank you so much for tuning in. And Dave, why don't you close us out with something?
Let's see. Oh, put me on the spot. Why don't Ches? Let's see. Um, just want to say that my phone's ringing, and I
It's not
gotta
me
do.
calling.
How's that?
All right. Well, hey, thanks everybody. We will see you next week. We're gonna try to
Hey,
do this on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. We'll figure it out. But
ciao. Well.
thanks so much.